Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Yeah, so I want to welcome you to the Policy Dialogue series. This is a follow-up of the event that happened in April on the 30th this year. Feel welcomed, and I would like for us to begin by, first of all, moving closer so that we are all of us like a community together. Feel free to move forward, then we can introduce ourselves. Welcome.
Recording in progress.
Feel free to move in front. All of you seated this side. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, let's move forward so that we can be together and leave the behind space for those ones who come a bit later. Excuse me? Yeah. And this is the Policy Dialogue series, which began last month, that is 30th of April 2024. And as we all know, Kenya, like many other countries across the world, is prone to a wide range of both natural and man-made disasters, from droughts and floods to disease outbreaks and conflicts. These emergencies can have very devastating effects to communities, to infrastructure and livelihoods, often requiring a very coordinated effort to mitigate the impact and save lives. So today, we are here courtesy of ASEC and the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry, who have formed a partnership, and this partnership aims at strengthening the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Kenya. This partnership is boldly recognizing the role and the importance of entrepreneurship and innovators in shaping the future. That having been said, I would like for us to go into introducing ourselves, because we are not so many. We introduce ourselves so that we get to know who is in the room, and then we'll go straight into the presentation to get to know how the program of the day will look like. So we'll begin by introducing ourselves from, I think, from this end, and then we go around. You have another microphone, or is it this one? Okay.
Good morning, everyone. So nice to have you here. My name is Prudence. Work at ASEC as projects coordinator. Looking forward to an awesome day. Thank you.
Mic check. Good morning. My name is Andrian. I am an education advocate under UNESCO. I represent the Kenyan youth in SDG 4. Also, I am a founder of Wezo Study Foundation. It advocates for children with disabilities in terms of quality education, and I'm glad to be here.
Be a bit audible.
Okay, my name is Mandela Wilson. I run a startup called Urban Trade I'm from Migori.
Morning, gentlemen and ladies. I'm Jim Israel from Janem Limited. We are an incubation hub in Kisumu for the youth.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Edna Onyach. I represent Live Your Dream Enterprises Limited as a CEO and co-founder. Glad to be here.
Good morning. My name is Dorcas Isaboke. I am from APN, the communication consultant for the KIA project.
Hello, good morning. My name is Brian Derito. I work at ASEC as a project coordinator and membership support.
Good morning. My name is Stacey Obiero. I'm from Mideva Labs, a research consultancy.
Good morning. My name is Amika Nyawade Shako, representing Savo Labs. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Ian Kiprop. I represent Kipra. I do policy analysis.
Good morning. My name is Charles Mwangi. I'm with the Kenya Space Agency.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nongari Ndehi. I'm representing Kamunju Coffee Farm as the project director.
Good morning. My name is Isaiah Gichana. I work with Africa Bioenergy Programs, and I'm also the treasurer for ASEC.
God is good and all the time. My name is Victor Otieno. I'm the managing director of Vifa Consult, startup at SME Research. Asante sana.
Good morning. My name is Dennis Odhiambo from Kenya Red Cross Society, disaster management officer.
Good morning. My name is Franklin Ojambo. I'm representing Frankie's Foundation as the CEO. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Pauline Kadi. I'm representing Kilifi County Government. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Apologies, I'm late. My name is Maureen, and I'm representing Somo Africa.
Good morning, everyone. How are we all feeling? Bright and early in the morning. My name is Wanjiro Kenyanjui. I'm the Gender Equality and Social Inclusion Advisor at ASEC. Karibuni.
Good morning. My name is Edith Omundi. I'm the communications lead at ASEC. Karibuni.
Hello everyone, sorry for the confusion. I'm Celestine Otieno, representing Somo Africa. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the policy dialogue. We are very happy to have all of you here. Now that we know each other, I think it's a good opportunity for us to stand up and pray, then we can begin our program. We ask for a volunteer to lead us into praying. Volunteer?
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, in the mighty name of Jesus, we come before you this morning with thanksgiving in our hearts. We thank you, Abba Father, for this far that, Lord, you brought us. Even, your Father, we want to dedicate the day before you, that, Lord, your Father, as we go ahead, may you be with us, may you guide us and protect us throughout the day. Your people who are going to job for the Lord, even present for the day, Lord your Father, to pray that Lord may you guide them and be with them. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray, we believe. Amen.
Thank you very much. Please take your seat. Let us go straight into the program, and I would like to introduce our first speaker to deliver. He will come here to deliver the expectations of this forum. This is a man who sees the bigger picture and plans appropriately to achieve results. He is a finance management professional with over 12 years of experience and unmatched skills in coordinating projects from inception to completion. Ladies and gentlemen, help me to welcome Mr. Isaiah Gishana, who is also the treasurer at ASEC board.
Good morning. Yeah, after such an introduction, I wonder what I should say. Only to say that I love working with entrepreneurs. That's the thing that gives me passion, because sometimes we ask ourselves, what is it that gives you passion when you wake up in the morning? And I want you to imagine when you meet with an entrepreneur, telling you the stories of their success, the stories of their challenges, and how they're impacting lives. And that's why we are here. But now when I look at our agenda for today, the first line says policy dialogue. But I want us to focus also on what is below that. Leveraging innovation and entrepreneurship to provide disaster response. Now, what comes into our mind when we think about that? Because as entrepreneurs, we always see disaster as a big problem. Yes, there's flood coming on. The rain is pounding, the roads are broken, yeah? Crops can't grow because there is a lot of drought, interchanging, we don't know what to do. And then we, with our businesses, we are right in there. But then we say that we are what? Innovators. And innovators do what? Innovators find solutions. So even as we continue on the policy dialogue, I want you to look at this disaster on one hand, and on the other hand, look at it as an opportunity. We ask ourselves, what kind of opportunities can we be able to draw from the disasters all around us in terms of providing solutions? Because when you look in the world, even in the businesses that we do, we only provide two things, by the way. One, we are either supplying goods, or number two, we're providing a service in the cause of humanity. How do we do that responsibly and sustainably? When we look at climate resilience, the climate is changing because of our own activities. How do we impact? How do we look at the kind of impact we are creating from our businesses? Whatever sector you are in, how are you contributing? Either mitigating or increasing the impact which is negative. And how do you manage to harness that to be able to ensure that the business that you are running today, even as an ecosystem, running through this and supporting entrepreneurs in whatever capacity that we have, how do we ensure that the system that we are building up is one that can be there for posterity? Looking at agriculture, how are we impacting on that agriculture? What kind of farming methods are we doing? Are we clearing trees? Are we degrading the soil and making sure that the soil is no longer good? So besides endangering the future generation, what impact are we doing from our own business activities? If we look at health, lots of diseases coming on, yeah? Children dying, there's a lot of outbreak, cholera, name all of them. And it could be a result of what we are doing. So how do we mitigate that? Looking at transport, looking at education, what is that impact that we are creating, and how can we be able then to address that? So even as we look, discuss on a policy. Now, the policy is supposed to give us a guideline, supposed to help us manage those kind of eventualities. So that in that operating environment that we are, it's there for today and it's there for tomorrow. When people are making profit, when people are increasing the impact in terms of jobs, how is that impacted? So so that now, as we discuss on the various aspects of the policy, we are looking at currently. What are we doing currently from what we are now? What are we doing currently in our businesses, in our country, in the world? How are we contributing on that? I know from the organization I work for, we benefit from carbon credits. Now, our farmers engaging in the biogas, they have the reduction of emissions. Those emissions are converted into certificates, credit certificates that we sell in the global market. And the money comes here to help the farmers. But is that enough? How can we influence the whole world to embrace that? Yeah? I know the government is also looking at getting a cake of that. What kind of impact is that going to have in your business in terms of the cost of running your business, but also what kind of opportunities is it going to have? How do we deliberate around that? When we're looking, so even as we discuss on the various policies and issues that come up, let's look at it in the short term. And the short term is basically our response that we give. There's a flooding in Mayu Road, so what we do, we send around 5 tractors to clear what? The debris from the road so that motorists can do what? Can pass. But by the time the flood is passing, cows have been taken, houses have been destroyed, children have lost lives, schools can't open, yeah? But do we see that as things that we normally do on a day-to-day basis? When we are clearing the bush for planting, are we also planting trees to ensure that the soil is well taken care of? Are we planting trees to ensure that there's enough, the environment or habitat is really self-balancing itself? So those are the things that we need to do what? We need to reflect. But even as we continue, we also need to know that the policy is the work of the government. How can we link up with the government? How can we link up with international partners to ensure that whatever proposals that we have, whatever solutions that we envisage are also things that can be funded well, things can be supported, and hence, once they are supported fully, that then enables us to do what? Enables us to live sustainably and to achieve that growth. Then, now being a finance person, I'm actually asking myself, to what extent are we using data to do the modeling? So that when we see our businesses, we are of course looking at revenues and growth and all that. But how are we also looking at the mitigation measures that we have to include? Yeah? If we are planning for that growth, if we want our ecosystem to be strong and also to grow, and growth means that we are supporting more entrepreneurs in the system, utilizing natural resources, are we also showing what kind of opportunities are there in the long run? What kind of challenges are there in the long run? Yeah? So that now people are making informed decisions. So let's look at the resources that are available among us and what we can be able to get from our partners. Let's look at how to standardize so that now we have got a common approach that can be there for posterity. Let's look at capacity building among the ecosystem. But also let's look at advocacy. How do we ensure the government listens to us, is able to make those changes to come on? So my assumption is that even as we discuss this, even as we come with the various items, basically leveraging what? Technology and innovation. So we are innovators. We are solution providers. As we provide those solutions, how do we engage? What kind of policy impact is going to be linked to that? And how can we be able to marry the two and ensure that there's growth in the long run? So I could still expect that we will form working groups to ensure that the discussion goes beyond the meetings that we have, so that there's that sustainability in the long run. There are proper structures, and also we are able to identify the kind of partners that we are able to work with, we are able to engage, and to ensure that that's growth. So that when we are looking at 10 years from now, 15 years from now, we shall not only look at our business, we shall not only look at our ESOs, but we shall be able to look at what kind of impact have we created in the community. How have we contributed to the growth from our business perspective, so that as we are making money now, we are also creating better potential for the future growth. So as you reflect on the policy issues that have to come on board, look at it in terms of that growth in the long run, that impact that you will create, and the name that you create, the legacy that your business will leave, and all that will have to contribute to society. So with that, I beg to stop, unless you want me to continue. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So welcome and hope for a good discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gishana, for that wonderful presentation. I would like to also recognize that we have an online audience following in these discussions, and we thank you very much for making time to be part of this policy dialogue. Allow me to just pass a message and request our guests who are seated on the sidelines to please join and sit on the middle aisle so that we can be able to fill it fast. Feel free to just come and fill the middle row, please. Yes, please. Yeah, the middle row. Yeah. So as we make that move, I would also like to call upon our next speaker, who is Mr. Derek Mugasia, the fourth Estate Industrial Revolution champion at the board of ASEC. Welcome, Mr. Derek Mugasia. He will be presenting virtually, actually.
Thank you very much. I hope I can be heard in the room. My name is Derek Mugasia. I am a board member of ASEC, in charge of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. I'm also a coordinator for the IOMI 254 as an innovation hub, and I work with the Kenya Red Cross. The IOMI 254 is a hub under the Kenya Red Cross Society. I'm speaking to you today from Mombasa, but I'm really happy to be part of this conversation today. For me, mine is really just a reflection, and hopefully this helps us to look at this conversation from a broad perspective as well. We are talking about leveraging innovation, and I would like us to reflect on maybe 3 things from what we observed during COVID, the COVID pandemic. This was a global issue. It affected everyone. But there are a few things that we noticed, because for this particular one, everyone was paying attention. Everyone was paying attention to it because it was affecting everyone. So one of the things that we saw was that this pandemic demonstrated humanity's collective motivation to just help. Because there were a lot of people that were struggling, a lot of people that were suffering, a lot of people that were scared. And we realized that there were a lot of individuals as well, organizations, and even governments just coming together to collaborate across borders. And this was a very real demonstration of the power of solidarity in addressing crisis. So this was a one-off, but it's not a very unique case. We are seeing a lot of solidarity movements coming up, even with the ongoing conflict around Israel, around Ukraine, and so on. We see solidarity from one country to another, from individuals expressing their interest. And particularly for COVID, this demonstrated itself, even at a local level, you were able to see it. So the collective motivation, the collective effort of just humanity saying we are in this together and coming together to speak in one voice and support each other. The second thing that came up during this pandemic was the power of frugal innovation. And I'm talking about this because this is the innovation entrepreneurship ecosystem. The power of frugal innovation really took a center stage in that entire response to the pandemic. And we saw a lot of improvised solutions that were emerging. Some of them were already partly existing, perhaps through startups, perhaps through individual innovators, through students who are doing their research, through researchers, even commercial organizations. This started coming up very quickly. And we realized also that while people were willing to develop frugal innovation to respond to some very rapid issues, including sanitation and so on, we saw a lot of products coming up to help kids wash their hands in school. And I think we all saw this. If you If you are like me, you probably ended up with a few kitenge masks, and you had a few of those for every other occasion, because now, if you are wearing an official on Monday that was blue in color, there was a kitenge mask that was matching with it. And we observed this happening. Now, beyond that, there were other things that were a bit more sophisticated, like medical devices and medical solutions. And we realized that one of the things that was very key in enabling this to happen was access to expertise, the know-how, the evidence, and the validation that the work that was being done properly, and it was going somewhere, it was going to help. This was coming especially from bigger companies, from experts, from universities. We saw a lot of this validation coming up. The people were willing to work together to provide knowledge to make this happen. So frugal innovation kicked in very quickly to support where there were gaps in distribution, and we saw a lot of distributed production that also helped. People designed solutions from local, at a local point of view, and provided these designs at a global level for people to be able to distribute and produce at their own level. So this is another lesson that we learned at that time. The third thing that we learned was that the traditional frameworks were really just looking at a very small, localized, and short-term emergencies. They were not ready for scale, and they were not ready for longer durations of global pandemic. They were not ready for longer durations of global emergencies. Now, during this time, we saw a lot of adaptability taking place, scalability taking place, and people were mobilizing each other in strategy in one way or the other. And we saw, I think a key example was the COVID-19 vaccine. We saw companies like AstraZeneca coming up with these vaccines and sharing their patent through partnership to say, we're going to give you the rights to produce this. And they collaborated with companies in India, like Serum Institute of India, which helps to produce this vaccine in large numbers. Now, this level of looking at framework, a decentralized, a flexible approach to responding really helped with adaptation. It helped with just coping with evolving situation at this time. And it also helped with trying to go against the normal top-down approach of coordinating emergency response. I think these three key issues or learning points are very critical for us to reflect a bit more every so often whenever we have disasters, whenever we have emergencies like the flooding issue that we're experiencing right now. What are we missing anyways, even despite all this? What do we really realize that we are missing? One of the things that we realized we are missing was a proper framework, because people are willing to support. Innovations were there and people were willing to get into it. We started looking at different approaches to respond, but we realized that we did not have a proper framework that was set up to be able to kick in and help people to respond at their own level as well. And that's a part of why we're having this conversation today. The second thing we realized was that people initially did not know, were not aware that they could actually help. Because every day as innovators, as entrepreneurs, we create value and we push this value to the market. Then when emergency emerges, it's like we forget the value that we have been pushing to the market. The need for it is still there, even at a humanitarian level. The need for the value that we have been creating all along at a commercial level for commercial purposes is still there. People still need airtime. When was the last time you had that there was a response, there was an emergency somewhere and people were given airtime? You know, it's not like people stop communicating whenever this happens. People forget that there's need for innovation around managing of waste management. When people have been moved into one school, a huge crowd of a whole village, then how do you deal with waste management in this sense? How do you deal with the organic waste that comes up? How do you deal with the plastic waste? How do you deal with all these things? These people do not stop cooking. They need GCOs, they need gas, they need all these logistical solutions. But for most part, you'll find that the kind of value that we try to give to them to help with a temporary response is usually the usual thing, the normal things, which are still okay, like food and clothing and shelter. They are the basics. Of course, we need that. but the other things are still useful. And for most part, the people that are able to provide the other things are not aware that they can actually be valuable, they can play a role in responding and, you know, offering relief to the people that are affected. So I think my challenge to us today as we're having this conversation is that as an innovation ecosystem, we stand at a very strategic point. We are the innovators, we're the entrepreneurs, and we really specialize in identifying weaknesses and figuring out a way to create efficient and very effective solutions to emerging challenges. That is our expertise. That's the area that we thrive. We innovate around these areas. Can we channel that mindset to flooding? Can we channel that mindset drought? Can we channel that mindset to accidents? When roads have been shut off and people are not able to move from point A to B, how do we take advantage of that? How do we see it both as an opportunity for us to create value and offer value, but also as an opportunity for us to create hope by coming together and trying to find these solutions for everyone? So to me, that's just the reflection that I was hoping I could also contribute to this conversation. And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Derek Mugasia, for that presentation. We've picked that during a disaster or emergencies, people tend to demonstrate the power of solidarity, and there is also power of frugal innovation, and people also tend to localize the solution to be able to fit the current need. So at this point, I would like to welcome Mr. Charles Mwangi. He's the acting director at the Space Center and Technology Development. Welcome, Mr. Mwangi. Sector or center? Oh my goodness,
So good morning. Good morning again. So like has been said, my name is Charles Mwangi. I'm the acting director, Space Sector and Technology Development at the Kenya Space Agency. I feel like fish out of water, given that we are in a different segment. But again, thank you, Mercy, for inviting us here. So at the agency, I'll just talk briefly about what we do at the agency and the reason why we're in this conversation. So the Kenya Space Agency is established with the mandate to promote, coordinate, and regulate space activities in the country. We are a government body. We are domiciled at the Ministry of Defense. But having said that, we are a civilian entity. So the role that we play into is both the two segments, and I'll talk later to the most relevant segment that is relevant for us today. So we have what we call the upstream. The upstream is essentially where you develop satellites and put them out there, the launch vehicles. How do you get that data to the ground? And again, there are opportunities, a lot of opportunities for the different segments that are represented here to participate in that. The other also very critically important segment is what we call the downstream. What do you do with that data when it lands on the different devices on the ground? And so the reason why we are here is because one of the key important data sets that does contribute to disaster response or even the whole cycle of disaster management is satellite imagery. Satellite imagery gives you the broad view of disaster before, after, and how potentially we can respond. And I wanted just to share a bit of what we've been trying to do. One of the, again, we're also not very old. We were established in 2017, meaning we are also a startup within government ecosystem. So we are grappling with that element of trying to find our foot within the sector. And I remember when the floods started happening, we were asking ourselves how best can we support. the government agencies that are supposed to respond to disaster. One of the questions was, do we have satellite imagery available that would enable us to be able to point out where the disasters are happening? So we have two segments. There is data that is commonly available freely, which sometimes is not granular enough to allow us to be able to pick out like where a bridge has been washed up, where a building has been washed up. But essentially there is that possibility. And that is also one of the elements. We've been working, I saw a colleague from Red Cross. We've also been working closely with the team from the Red Cross, the National Disaster Operations Center, also try and see how we can pivot in and support them. And some of the gaps that we've identified within that, and that could also be opportunity for yourselves, is where is the data? Sometimes we don't have the data in terms of where are the schools, for example, where are the hospitals, where are those bridges? Because the point where we work from is from a geospatial. Geospatial is where we have location. If you don't know where your business is, or you don't know where your house is, then it becomes very difficult for you to be able to derive insights. So there is a gap in terms of the data being available. There is also the gap in terms of being able to analyze. Of course, again, when you talk about data, there is also in what form is it. And most of the time, we've not gotten to the level where we are able to make it in the digital format. Because when it's in a digital format, it becomes shareable. And in fact, one of the conversations we're getting into is then how do we monetize the data? So that if you have your own location data, or you have data that you've collected, then how then do we, if that data is required, how then do we make it available? How do you get compensated for having that data? And then if you have the analysis capability, then how then do you analyze that data for you to be able to help government? Because sometimes when you're in the private sector, you expect the government to have all the solutions. And you lose out on the opportunity because the solutions, you as a private sector are much more adaptive in terms of the innovation and being responsive to the technology evolution. And what we are seeking to, and part of the conversation, the reason why I'm in this conversation is to try and understand what is it that you would be able to bring to the table? What would be your expectation for us as a government agency? Because again, like we are saying, we do not exist in isolation of yourselves. How then can we then work together to develop solutions? Is it that you require us to set up as government certain infrastructure that then you can build up? And then how then do we ensure that we provide those solutions or those fundamental data sets that potentially sometimes exist within government for you to be able to derive value, for you to be able to build up solutions, for you to be able to again gainfully get value from those conversations. So in this conversation, to try and see also how again do we invite you, because I don't know how many people have had experience with any space-related data. Maybe from a show of hand. Geospatial data, who's using geospatial data in the room? I think at least one. There's not even one. But the intention is to try and see then how then do we get you into those spaces? How do we present you with the opportunities that are available? And I give a good, not potentially related to disaster, but I have also linked it to that. One of the areas that we're looking at is in agriculture. How do we support maybe the small scale holders, farmers, to be able to do much better? And how you do that with satellite imagery is when the satellites are overflying, they take image all the time. Then the next process is usually being able to classify. If you've looked at Google Maps, sometimes if you have the satellite imagery, it just looks like an image. Then how do you classify that image to be able to pick out the different, where are the buildings, where are the crops, where are the bare lands, where are the roads and the like. So that layer is usually very important, because then when you get to the level where you want to give advisory to the farmer, then you're able to know these are the number of farmers that you have. Or if you want to set up an aggregation center like for the counties or any processing center. If the private sector, if you want to set up shop and you already know how many, assuming we are in the agricultural sector, how many farmers you have, for example, or how much crop fields you have, then it goes a long way for you in terms of knowing how big your market, how big of a market you're able to tap. And then also the other element you're looking at is agro-insurance. If right now, for the conversation that you're having, how then do we fast track the payouts? Because the insurance, if you've taken an insurance product that requires you to get paid out, then it requires someone to go to the field. But the satellite imagery, then they can validate that process quite faster, because essentially you only require an image that was taken during that period. And then using that data, then you can potentially be able to say, this is the imagery that was available during that point, and that could be an opportunity for the private sector to tap into. And then you're able to say, this was the image before, this was the image after. It shows that my agricultural field has been inundated. And that is only one area. If it's a building, then you can potentially also be able to say the same. And one of the products that I was mentioning that you're working with Red Cross, and again, we had also support from other stakeholders like the Microsoft AI for Good in terms of processing, because we were trying to process imagery to try and see the areas that were affected by the floods. And then based on that, then we can have interventions either from the private sector or also from government. So I want to stop there again, also inviting you to explore the domain that you're referring to, what you're calling space, and also try and see the opportunities. And we're happy to get into this conversation in the beginning, these conversations with ASEC, and try and see how can we, as a government agency, add value. Because again, the reason why we establish is to be able to add value to the processes, to the livelihood, and also to be able to add value in terms of being able to generate revenue also as we grow our economy. So again, thank you for this opportunity, and we also look forward to continuing the conversation with ourselves. And again, one last challenge that I would also want to expand or extend to the private sector. When you hear governments have meetings, please do show up. Please do show up, because I've been in a number of government-led conversations, and we have had conversations about the challenges we are having in government, and the private sector are nowhere. And sometimes you lose out on that opportunity, because that is where you will get the business from government. Because sometimes as private sector, you're very fast in innovating, and you leave us as government in terms of trying to find out how those solutions that you're developing would add value to the work processes that we are doing within the government institutions. Again, thank you for this opportunity, and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charles Mwangi. Now we know when government calls for a meeting, it's important that you attend so that you get to know the opportunities that are available within the agency that has called for that meeting. At this moment, I would like to call our next presenter. She has 13 years of experience in designing and managing impact-driven programs across diverse sectors in the entrepreneurship ecosystem. Ladies and gentlemen, help me to welcome Mercy Kimelat, who is also the CEO of ASEC, to deliver the program overview. Welcome, Mercy.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Yeah, at least we are slightly trying to go back into our normal routine, dropping kids at school. How many enjoyed the traffic? I counted so many red lights today. My eyes are hurting, eh? Yes, so my name is Mercy Kimelat. I'm the CEO for ASEC, this wonderful association that is actually bringing all the stakeholders together. So Charles, we have heard your cry and saying how can private sector come in. We are bringing that stakeholder. If you look at this room and even the online audience, we have a humanitarian sector represented. We have the policy makers by Kipra is represented also. We also have the government itself, the Ministry of Defense, where you're coming from, and also the Ministry of Investments, Trade and Industry, where ASEC has an MOU to support the Kenya Industry Entrepreneurship Project up to this year. And then also we have county governments that are also part of this discussion. And I want to recognize Pauline, who has come all the way from Kilifi County. So she's saying we're not going to be left behind. Pwani ni Kenya. Yeah? Exactly. So Pauline, we recognize you. We also had a representative, I think they're still on their way, from Nairobi County, and they're in charge of the disaster response management also. But most importantly, we also have the ESOs. Where are our members? Kindly raise your hand. Yeah? Virtually and offline. These are the entrepreneur support organizations. They are on the ground working with the startups, the MSMEs, those who are still ideating, to help them come up with the right products and services to help design solutions for not only the community, but even for the country and even for a global audience. And also the other key stakeholder is communication, right? We can do great work. We can talk big things, come up with frameworks, institutionalize working groups, but we have to communicate, and that's why we also want to appreciate APN, who's also our partner in helping disseminate this information, because we need to create awareness. The solutions are already there, but there's no bridge, and communication acts as the bridge towards that. So before I go into who we are, what we do, and everything, everyone has a piece of paper, right? We all came here for this meeting for a reason. Right? So I want us, let's go to the expectation slide. I have 3 questions for you. Expectation, yeah. I have 3 questions for you. 1, what are you hoping to achieve by participating in the dialogue? I really like my 3 speakers who have spoken before me. They have tried to lay the foundation, but I really want to understand from your perspective, from your own individual experience. It could be something that you've also encountered as a challenge, or even seen as an opportunity. Why are you keen, and what are you hoping to actually achieve by participating in this dialogue? Oh, perfect, thank you. The second one, are we written that one down? Don't think so much, just one word, could even be a picture. Some of us understand things better in frameworks and diagrams. But what are you hoping to achieve by participating in this policy dialogue? Is it networking, new knowledge, understanding disaster? What is disaster? Even sharing your own experience. The second one, what kind of information would be most valuable to you living today? What is the one thing you would actually want to get as value? Whether it's knowledge, network, information. And then the third one, how can we ensure this policy dialogue is valuable use of your time? I know it's a very busy month, so many events happening everywhere. I even know a few of you who are going on TV in the next few minutes, others are going for board meetings and everywhere. But so how then do we make this policy dialogue a valuable use of your time? Because we do value you, we're going to be having more policy dialogues, we want to understand that. So one is, what are you hoping to achieve? The second one is, what kind of information will be most valuable to you? And then how do we ensure that this policy dialogue is a valuable use of your time? Online audience, please also type it in the chat. We'll have Prudence share it out, or you can actually unmute and share. Are we done? I give you 1 minute. All right, I can see some pens are writing. Okay. All right. I always believe in writing. When you write, you commit, you know, so that even when you're here with all the distractions that are happening, we really want you to be present and be part of this conversation. All right. So I think we can hear a few. Who's ready to share? Prudence, do we have any online who are ready? Not yet, okay. So the first one, what are you hoping to achieve by participating in the dialogue? Who's ready? Yes, Edna. For the online audience, we might need to. Yeah.
Yeah, the first question is I'd like to identify ways in which I can add value. The second question, how I can participate and be part of the conversation, not just today, but going forward. And the third is please be precise, keep time, and let us end it as you had promised us. Thank you.
I like that. Another one? Micah? And you can also introduce yourself. I know you're coming in a bit later. Yeah.
Thank you, Mercy. No, I didn't introduce myself. I was here on time. Let me defend myself. So I think for the first one, for me, it's critical just to learn how innovation can serve within this sector. I'm happy about the presentation around Kenya Space Agency. I think that was a very insightful presentation by Mr. Mwangi. To the second question, I think for me, I'm just keen to see maybe what are the channels available or venues available that some of the things that we do can provide positive impact within this sector. And then finally, I would like to echo the comments from the previous speaker. Maybe we just try and be more precise so that we can maximize the few hours that we have. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else? From the front, from the sides? I see a hand here.
All right, good morning. My name is Dr. Gamaliel. The biggest thing that I want to learn today is the challenges that are facing the policies that are being made and what we can be able to do about it. Because as far as I'm concerned, there are so many policies which have been put in place, but they are not being implemented. Thank you.
I see a lady over there. Yes.
What I aim to achieve by participating in this dialogue, number one is networking and knowledge sharing. And then, for number two, what I would want to do mostly is to get the statistics on the ground on this policy, the policy things right now.
Great, thank you so much. I think I'll stop from there. Do we have any from online? Edith, you can check? Nothing. Okay, great. So I think we're all aligned. And I think we can agree that we all have something to contribute, right? How many things they have something? An idea, innovation, expertise, whatever it is, we all have something, right? I can see one hand. So it's only two of us. I saw 3, 4. Right? So we all have something to contribute. This dialogue is not for our sake, okay? It is actually for the ecosystem. And we're trying to see how do we leverage all this wealth of knowledge within the network to be able to provide support in terms of solving the most critical and disaster-stricken situations. Because let me tell you, with entrepreneurship, how it comes to be is when there's a challenge or a gap or an opportunity that comes up. So this should be something that we should take forward quite seriously and also aggressively. So I can go into the introduction of ASEC. So who we are the Association of Startup and SME Enablers of Kenya. We're a network body of more than 150 entrepreneur support organizations that are working across the entire country, supporting startups, MSMEs, SMEs, and even large corporates rethink their strategy, rethink their business model, rethink even their own governance and leadership, and then also looking at how to help them access markets and link them also to investors to accelerate their business growth. Within the ASEC network, there are different sectors that our members serve, looking at agriculture, manufacturing. There's the 4th industrial revolution that Derek is championing, that is looking at the hardware where? Innovation ecosystem. So even if you have an idea, how do you build a prototype that can scale? That is being covered under the 4th Industrial Revolution. We also have the sustainable economies that's looking at the green, circular, and blue economy. So if you're in the fishery sector, if you're doing anything on circularity, waste management, as someone had mentioned, we have members that are actually supporting on that. The different outfits that our members have, one is looking at different incubators. So if you have an idea and you want to take it to market, you can join an incubation program. We have accelerators that are focused on growth stage enterprises to help you scale and grow. And most importantly, we also have scale-up accelerators that help you tap into the necessary capital to help you thrive and grow. And our mission as ASEC is really to coordinate and represent the interest of these entrepreneur support organizations, not only to government, but also to development partners and regulators, so that we can design a conducive and enabling environment for the ecosystem. So some of the pillars that we have, one of them of course is on policy and advocacy, and you're all part of here. And the reason we take the biggest chunk of our work to do policy is because we realized policy is a long-term game. Okay, the discussion that we'll have here today, and even analyzing the different policies that are existing, it's a change in changing the systems, right? And that takes time. But it's something that must be done with advocacy and also having a collective voice within. The other one is on collaboration. Like I mentioned to you, we've brought in multi-sectoral and even different stakeholders across the ecosystem to have one unified voice when it comes to dealing with the pertinent and emerging issue on disaster response and management. And then of course we do capacity building. So not only do we bring in different stakeholders together, but we also believe in equipping you with the skills, knowledge, and talent to be able to deliver the solution within your organization, or even supporting policymakers and government to make the right policies for the ecosystem. And finally is on internationalization, whereby how do we position our vibrant Kenyan ecosystem with all the solutions. We have entrepreneurs in the room who are doing good work. How do we position you at a global stage to be able to attract more investment, but most importantly to help Kenya be ranked top 50 most innovative cities in the world? And by that, we'll also be able to attract more investment, capital, more technology support, and even grow further as an ecosystem. Some of the key results, just a quick snapshot. We've managed to reach more than 20,000 participants across the country. We've been able to support and profile 150 entrepreneur support organizations, and you can find them on our website. So if you are an entrepreneur looking for a support organization, then you have access to that. And then also leading in terms of 12 innovation projects. So how we do projects is very different. We use data to design programmatic interventions that benefit not only the startups and SMEs, but even the growth of these different incubators and accelerators across Kenya. And then also looking at dialogues, we've been able to facilitate more than 10 ecosystem dialogues, whether it's looking at startup challenges or even Pan-African conversations. We actually are at the forefront of that as well. A bit of funding statistics is looking at how we've been able to utilize all these different pillars to drive the necessary capital within the organizations that we're supporting. One is looking at the SMEs. They were able to benefit to a tune of almost 1 billion euros to be able to facilitate their businesses to grow. And then also for our own members, more than 300,000 euros have been generated to them through a direct initiative of ASEC. So looking at all that is fantastic, but the challenge is where we are now, right? That is the past. Today we are here. Now, the format of the session today will be quite interesting. One, we always believe in data. So we're not here just to talk and see how we feel, but actually provide you real data from the ground, like what you requested for. So we actually conducted a rapid assessment of the Kenyan ecosystem, because we also understood that there were some barriers and bottlenecks that are hindering the growth of startups and SMEs to thrive. If you compare the business environment 10 years ago, it's very different from what it is now, right? And also we have the finance bill. How many have read the finance bill? 2 of us only. 3. I can see someone laughing. It's okay. We caught you. But don't worry, right? So policy is changing very rapidly, and you need to be aware of that. So what we've done is we conducted a rapid ecosystem research assignment on that one, and we even have one of our members, which is Mideva, who will come and present the recommendations and also the findings from what we uncovered from that research. The second one is that we want to do a flood impact assessment. Yes, some of us have been seeing pictures on TikTok or Twitter and everywhere seeing houses flood, but you do not see the economic dollars or the dollars attached to that kind of loss. So we want to bring to you in real facts how these floods have really affected not only our own personal livelihoods. I know a few people also have lost loved ones, but also there's the economic loss that we're facing as a country because of the floods. The other one that we're also going to bring to you is a situational analysis from Red Cross, who's actually on the ground and across the entire country. There is no corner that Red Cross is not covering, and we really want to appreciate you and your efforts to that. But I think also for us in this discussion, we want to bring that forefront and actually understand what is happening on the ground, so that now as a group here we are today, we can actually co-create different initiatives or structures or frameworks to be able to respond in time and relevance to what is actually happening on the ground as well. And finally, we'll be looking at how do we how do we create an institutional framework whereby we can plug in all the different initiatives that have come up from this discussion for action. And so I don't want to take much time. I want to invite Stacy. She can come up stage from Mideva Consult, and she can actually share with us the quick findings from the rapid ecosystem research assignment, and then also the recommendations that we go straight into the heart of the issue. But really, please feel at home, feel welcomed, and we're really happy to have you here, both online and also physical. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mercy. Good morning. My name is Stacy Obiero. I'm from Mideva Labs, which is the consultancy firm that is working with ASEC in the rapid assessment exercise that they were doing under the Kenya Industry and Entrepreneurship Project to assess the Kenyan entrepreneurship landscape in Kenya and the environment, as well as the ESO's operations, in order to design a collaboration framework. So I'll request to go to the slides. So on the 30th of April, we had a policy roundtable where we gathered multiple stakeholders ranging from academia, government, the ESOs themselves, the entrepreneurs, the non-profits, the policy shapers and regulators, as well as financiers. So we brought them together. We're able to present some of the ecosystem findings and some of the challenges on the ground, and we brought them together in different groups. They were able to discuss or rather co-create some of the solutions or some of the proposals that they thought would benefit the ecosystem. So I'll quickly run through some of the findings or the insights that we got from the ecosystem assessment. So they go quickly. Sorry? Great. Yeah, so we began by just checking on the positioning, Kenya's positioning globally. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so based on the Global Startup Ecosystem Index, we saw that Kenya was positioned 62nd globally, and that's across the different metrics that this assessment usually does. It does a quantity, it has quantity indicators checking on the number of SMEs in a country, number of co-creation, number of support organizations, and all that. They also have a quality assessment, and they also have a business business environment indicators. So based on that, Kenya ranked 62nd globally, and in Africa it ranked third. That is just after South Africa and Mauritius. And we saw that our best performing industry at the moment in terms of in the startup ecosystem is on energy and environment, where we rank 51st globally. And we also saw that last year, Kenya was ranked first in Africa in terms of investment destinations, that we're able to attract a funding investment of around $800,000 US last year. So that is in terms of the startup ecosystem, which generally checks on the health of the ecosystem. But on the Global Innovation Index, which now checks how ready are we, or how do we support innovation and new ideas in this space, I think this is where we lagged a bit, where we're able to rank 100 out of 132 countries which were assessed. And in most of the metrics that were assessed, or the indicators, you can see that most of them, I think the best one that we performed in was where we were positioned 81, and that was on knowledge and technology outputs. So some of the biggest lagging indicator areas were around human capital and research, and market sophistication indicators, which mostly look at how the domestic credit to the private sector, as well as the infrastructure. So yes, we are well advanced in ICT, but then what is the usage around that, as well as the electricity output per capita, and then also the environmental targets performance. So we also assessed some of the needs and the pain points that were expressed by the MSMEs and the startups, and some of the most recurring ones were around access to affordable capital, and this was mostly around some of the funding requirements, which are very tough on them, and the high borrowing rates comparable to other ecosystems that we were able to look at. As well as access to the best talent, so them finding skilled personnel, and then also we saw a very high attrition rate among the startups, and then high personnel cost to acquire this talent. Then there was also a challenge on location and getting access to clientele, that's access to the markets, and also how they can be able to digitize their businesses. Some of the barriers generally now on the macro level that were arising were around access to the supporting infrastructure, access to credit and finance, and also some of the rapid ecosystem changes, which some startups were not very well prepared for. So we saw a lot of startup exits, especially in the year 2022, where we had, there was a global tech, there was a global tech change globally, so there were a lot of exits and startup closes in that year. So that was one of the challenges that we saw, and also the challenge of access to markets. In terms of the policy and regulation in the landscape, so there we looked at majorly three provisions that specifically directly speak into the MSMEs and startup support. So that was the Kenya Micro and Small Enterprises Policy, as well as the Micro and Small Enterprises Act of 2012 and the Startup Bill of 2022. So some of the emerging or the cross-cutting objectives that we saw across all the policy provisions were around providing an enabling environment, access to resource, inclusivity and equality, innovation and technology adoption, as well as good governance and accountability. But also what we discussed during the dialogue that we had is that, yes, we do have the presence of these policies, but the implementation mechanism for these policies is what we saw a gap in, and that was lacking. So I think that is part of the things that we can make a discussion of today. As well, we did an ease of doing business assessment, and we saw the areas where Kenya does well, but then some of the least performing indicators in terms of the ease of doing business, this assessment is usually done by the World Bank. We saw that we are lagging in the area of our taxes. So our taxes were relatively high compared to the global average, which is 16%, and our corporation tax as a country is at 30%. Also, even for the SMEs, the ones who earn less than 1 million annually, also compared to other ecosystems that are doing well, for instance, South Africa, they don't tax, they have a 0% rate for less than 1 million, compared to us where we tax even the least, the companies that have a lower turnover. So also in terms of the enforcement of contracts, that's an area that we needed to look at. And then the registration of businesses and the licensing, that is the number of procedures. Compared to other countries, I think we have one of the highest in terms of the procedures which are required to register a business. And then in terms of trading across borders, the time to import, for Kenya, that is the time to import and the border compliance, it takes around 180 in Kenya compared to the global average, which is 72. And then the cost to import for Kenya, which is $833 compared to the global average of 446. So those are some of the areas that we need to look at in order to improve our business environment. Yeah, so we also assessed what our Startup Act looks like compared to other African countries that already have an existing Startup Act, and some of the provisions and some of the highlights that we saw around Rwanda, for instance. They have a zero-rated payee for people who are earning less than 776 USD. Also in Nigeria, we saw they introduced a startup investment seed, which not only funds the startups and MSMEs, but also it also covers the accelerators and the incubator funds, companies. Okay. Great. So based on that, on our discussions, we had discussions on two fronts. One was on the collaboration framework, and then the second one was how we can strengthen the ecosystem. And so some of the things that were suggested or the outcomes from the policy roundtables or from the groups, most of them were around these 6 areas. That is on the standardization of the incubation framework, the open data system, having an open data system, and doing a joint resource mapping and sharing. Also coming up with fundraising consortiums, having a joint advocacy, and then also capacity building. So on the standardization of the incubation framework, so there are other elements that were included, including how we can formalize registration, the programs, the training curriculum, but then an aspect of it was also on how we can have collaboration between the ESOs. So there was a recommendation that the ESOs should not be standalone entities, but rather partner and be part of organizations. So there were 2 areas that we thought the 2 models that we saw this could be implemented. First one could be a homogeneous approach where we have like similar ESOs who come together and homogenize their operations. So that could be they homogenize their data operations, let's say they homogenize their marketing operations, or the other approach or model will be a heterogeneous approach where we have a mix of different players. It's like a consortium of different players providing different services. We have those who are providing business support, those who are providing training and capacity building. We have those who are providing financial access services and bringing them together. And this could also be on a regional basis. So these consortiums could be based on, let's say, the ASAL areas, that's the northeastern areas or the lakeside areas, and they support the business ecosystem in those regions. So that was one of the recommendations. The other recommendation was on having an open data system, so we saw a challenge of ESOs having data that exists in silos, so they're not able to make the best use of that data since they were not even using it to make decisions internally. So having a platform where the different ESOs can bring together their data and we're able to make come up with industry intelligence based on that data, since a lot of the data concerning the startup itself can be found within the ESOs that serve the different regions. In terms of the resource mapping and sharing, the recommendation here was having a standardization of common tools used by startups. And we can agree on the utilization of cost sharing and how we can share resources at a cluster level. Then I spoke around the fundraising consortiums where we can have a pool of a common pool where the ESOs are able to raise funds. So one of the challenges that came out here and was raised is that there seems to be a competition between the ESOs and the government in terms of accessing this fund. So the ESOs felt that being the weaker, they thought they were the weaker party, that they could have a consortium or a common pool that they were able to raise the funds for that. And also having joint advocacy, and that is very widely supported by the research and academia space. So in terms of when you're doing advocacy, it's usually very heavily evidence-based and requires a lot of data. So the support from the research and academia showing what the impact of these policies is likely to be. So based on those insights, we're able to lobby to the policy organizations and the government, especially during this season where there is public participation for the finance bill, so that we're able to lobby at this stage for those policies which are favorable to the economy, as well as joint capacity building for the ESOs. So how we saw this being implemented, so we could have the first phase, which is a high-level collaboration. So we start with the easy, or rather the not so high effort areas of collaboration. That could be in terms of events and networking, the multi-stakeholder communication, having a multi-stakeholder communication platform, having a knowledge resource platform, and the joint ESO capacity building initiatives. And then based on, since we have interacted a lot, we can move on to the second phase, which is a middle level collaboration, having joint programs, starting to have working groups, as well as having an open resource sharing platform. And then you can also jointly advocate for government regulation and policies. Then I think after interacting a lot more within each other and forming a deeper understanding, we can move into the deep collaboration phase, where we are able now to even involve, have the fundraising consortiums and the open data sharing, which are quite sensitive areas, as well as the standardized incubation framework as a legislation. So in terms of the proposals that pertained to strengthening the ecosystem, okay, I think they are not included on the slides, but I can just quickly go through them. So the first recommendation was around having the ESOs being entrepreneur-centered, that is addressing the needs of the entrepreneurs. So we were also able to see some of the needs which were not met by the ESOs. We saw most of the ESOs focus on training and capacity building, but then there were other entrepreneur needs which still have a gap in the ecosystem. That is, for instance, talent acquisition and access to market linkages, which we have very few ESOs addressing that, as well as having capacity building for the different players in the space. And the other recommendation was on awareness campaigns. So we have a lot of government support in the space, but from the interviews on the ground, we were able to see that most people or most entrepreneurs were not aware of some of these support mechanisms which were put in place, including some of the government-backed loans like Wezesha, Uwezo. So some of the entrepreneurs are not aware of this. So having a campaign around that. Then the other recommendation was on the decentralization of entrepreneurship support. We saw that around 87% of the ESOs are located in Nairobi and the 4 major cities. So how can we be able to have a county partnership system, or how can we be able to elevate the county business support systems, because each county has they have an incubation framework. So how can we be able to partner with them so that we have entrepreneurship support across all the 47 counties, as well as the other recommendation is the bundling of the licensing processes. So instead of having different, as you saw that Kenya lags behind in terms of the number of procedures, so how can we put all these requirements into one just major requirement, so that entrepreneurs are able to apply for just one major license instead of having to apply for different licenses, which takes a lot more time. And the last one was around tax incentives for early stage startups in order to attract investors, as well as to enhance the survival rate of the entrepreneurs, of the early stage startups as they try to make it into the ecosystem. Thank you very much, Mercy.
So thank you, Stacey. Don't go too far. If you have a question, please note it down. But it just gives you a snapshot of looking at even how we are supporting entrepreneurs, both at a county level, but even at a national level. There's still work that needs to be done, as well as also many good findings that we are actually going to see how we can implement and execute. Thank you so much, Stacey. Now, I'd like to invite Victor to come and give us a flood impact assessment, and then we can go into Q&A. Karibu, Victor. Let's give him a round of applause. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mercy, and good morning, everyone. Bwana Yesu asifiwe. The current government is very focused on religion. So my name is Victor Otieno. I'm the managing director of VIFA Consult, which is an SME and startup research firm. Our focus mainly is to produce data and evidence that can either help ESOs in terms of better structuring their engagements with SMEs as well as startups, as well as inform policy conversation with national government ministries, agencies, as well as county government. I also am an immediate former chief officer at from Nairobi City County, where I worked there for 1 year between January and December, and I decided to call it quits, just to go back to the ecosystem because I felt I would be more valuable from this side. So I will not take too much time. Internet, okay. So I will probably just start. So we did a survey which we're calling the Kenya SME Flood Impact Assessment, with the aim of course, our rallying call is building back together. So this is very similar to the situation we found ourselves in during COVID-19, where there was a lot of governments coming up with proposals, programs to be able to support SMEs, startups, because of course they were most impacted. So a survey was able to cover around 163 SMEs as a sample size. We were able to cover at least 13 sectors, as well as 12 counties. So ideally we can't sample everyone, but at least just to get a dipstick in terms of what is happening on the ground. Of course, the floods is not something that, I think of course it got government flat-footed, but the data was there. So if you look at the Met Department had data on high rainfall as far back as May 2023. So it's not that the data was not there, but either way, the floods came, El Nino came. It's not only in Kenya, we have Tanzania, of course the East Africa region. The reason why we focus on SMEs is because SMEs are the backbone of the economy, looking at 33% of GDP, specifically looking at agriculture, because the entrepreneurs within the sector are most affected. We know agriculture is important because, again, is around 40% in terms of GDP. So again, you don't want your best people being affected and nothing happens. So that's ideally what we're focusing on. Of course, looking at the floods, it affected other sectors, transport, health, tourism, agriculture as well. So the Kenya National Data Operations Center reported over 4,000 livestock dead, over 27,000 acres of land, of cropland damaged, 24 schools affected. So we can't just wish away, if 4,000 livestock die, it means someone and their livelihood has been affected. If we have 27,000 of cropland affected, we need to be able to respond. And this response is not necessarily government only. I mean, we have government, ESOs, I think even ASEC can be able to do something. I'm not sure if you've been able to marshal members to be able to give out something. But ideally is, we need to be able to quantify the extent of our problem for us to be able to prescribe a solution. So I think also Red Cross had given a report of around 132 people missing, around 23,000 on average households displaced, and of course the numbers have kept on piling. So of course the idea around this study was just how do we quantify what is the situation on the ground, and once we're able to have that, then how do we respond? You can respond in terms of tech, you can respond in terms of money, you can be able to get different types of responses, but we wanted the SMEs or the startups to tell us exactly what kind of support that they needed. So in terms of our first result is, number one is the nature of damage caused by floods to small businesses. So we've seen, a lot of organizations giving mattresses, giving food to households, etc. It is fine, but from an SME perspective, how do you respond? So the top three damages that were caused on SMEs, number one was business asset damage. So it could be your pikipiki, ilikunywa maji, or the engine of your car. If you're an Uber driver, like my car was, I used to live in Syokimau, I had to move because my engine knocked. It's good that I'm not in Uber business, but there are people who are in Uber, again, some of the assets were damaged. So again, this cuts across different sectors. There is loss of stock or inventory. Again, for small businesses, what you would know is, I'm sure you know these statistics, is we have over 70% of businesses in Kenya being wholesale retail. So a lot of us, or a lot of our entrepreneurs have a lot of stock. So it could be stock ya nyanya, it could be stock of kitungu, it could be stock of clothes. So this was greatly affected. And it's something that we received as feedback. Lastly is lost revenue. So again, because depending with the sector, we were talking to guys who are in events, they're saying, I can't, there's no events. I can't leave the house. Guys from agriculture were saying, either my crops were damaged or I lost the entire crop. So it means that that has really impacted their ability to make revenue. So that again is so now we are. So here we are. So these are the three in terms of business asset damage, loss of stock, as well as lost revenue. So if there is any intervention that is going to come towards SMEs, probably it should come on those three thematic areas. So again, depending, it could be government in terms of programs, and we've seen other government, Australia, US, who've previously had experiences with floods, develop programs or funding around lost revenue. So again, you have to have data of all the SMEs. Then you have to have a process where you can be able to verify and check that it is legitimate that someone lost revenue through floods, or they can be able to describe or enumerate that they actually were affected. Again, it's of course it's a challenge in terms of Kenya, because again we still have challenges around data, but we still can be able to get a solution given that we have county governments, and county governments have some semblance of data of SMEs within the counties. So again, these are top three areas that we saw or we received in terms of feedback. In terms of number of employees affected, again, SMEs, of course, are defined under the MSME Act, and SMEs are classified in terms of employees as well as turnovers. So we just wanted to get a semblance of if you are to do an intervention, to what degree or how many SMEs in terms of numbers are we looking out for. We have 54% of SME surveys surveyed indicating between 1 to 15 employees were affected negatively by the floods, 23% between 16 to 25 employees, and of course we can see there a small percentage of 5% with over 50 employees affected. Again, SMEs don't employ as many people per SME according to the MSME Act, but again it gives you some semblance of numbers or in terms of the number of employees that were affected. In terms of proportion of monthly income lost due to floods, again we just wanted to find out, not everyone is affected the same. So you don't want to give 10,000 to everyone, and yet you have an SME who has lost maybe 100 employees and has their entire income wiped out. So again, we can see here between 4% are saying between 1 to 10% of their incomes were affected, 66%, 11 to 15%, but we can see a majority are saying between 37 and 32% are saying between 31 to 40% as well as 41 to 50% lost revenue. So again, like I said, this is correlated to the sector investment by our entrepreneurs. So a lot of people are in stock. They are buying to sell. So kama mvua ilinyesha and the entire tomato stock got lost, I mean, that's almost 100% lost revenue. The same for agriculture. Again, agriculture is a big contributor to GDP. And we can see, based on the numbers, over 4,000 livestock dying, over 27,000 acres of land affected. That would be reflected on not just current revenue loss, but future revenue lost. So we need to be able to find ways in which we can be able to backstop our SMEs in terms of designing programs, either for around helping them rebuild, either or even buying them new assets, where repairs need to be done. How can we be able to help them repair? If they don't have stock, what can we do? So in terms of feedback, in terms of support that SMEs had indicated that they would need, of course, I think finance always comes up every other time. You don't have money now, you don't even have more money, so we need more money. So we need financial support in terms of grants as well as low interest loans to be able to help SMEs, either in terms of buying new equipment or even repairing whatever has been damaged. The second area is asset purchase or asset finance. If, for instance, you had a piki-piki, let me not use the word nduthi, but if you had a piki-piki or a motorbike and it got damaged, you need to buy it or you need to replace it. So that is something that we received. Of course, we have stock purchase for those who lost inventory, or a provision of working capital. So it doesn't, either as development partners or as stakeholders, we could possibly look at quantifying, I used to buy clothes in Kikomba, and the shirts, got damaged. Can we be able to see how we can be able to restock for them? Technical support in terms of equipment repair and premise rebuilding. Again, not everyone wants a complete replacement of the asset. If there is a possibility, either working through NYS or working through TVETs, can we be able to get some repair done? And again, there was an interesting feedback of around insurance, flood insurance options. So again, we all know insurance penetration in Kenya is not as high. I think around 3%, if I'm not wrong. But again, as we get into disaster starts happening, there is an opportunity for the insurance sector to move into the SME space and see how we can be able to provide value for SMEs. So generally, again, this was a rapid study. We did it for around 3 days. So that's why you find that the outcomes or the recommendations are not as in-depth, because we are having very quick conversations with SMEs. So generally, what are the recommendations for both county as well as national government is we should be able to do a post-flood evaluation of government. Remember, around January, a lot of government agencies, but counties had indicated, and of course it's within the PFM Act, for them to allocate some funding around floods. What happened to that money? So that's a question. We shouldn't, just because the rains have stopped, we shouldn't just say, okay, now let's move on. So we need to be able to, at least from a county government perspective, either at the COG level or national government, we should be able to see an evaluation of the floods. So in terms of what was the damage, what resources were allocated where, and how those resources were used, and how can we be able to improve the next time we have such natural disasters. And again, because floods it's not something that happens out of the blue. This data is out there. Can we be able to prepare better? Looking at comprehensive water harvesting plan, remember around over 80% of Kenya is classified as arid, arid and semi-arid land. And what you notice, even from, I think, 2016, when we had a similar situation, is immediately after the floods, we always have drought. So the question, even a layman would ask, where does all this water go? I mean, we need to be able to find a way of harvesting this water so that we can be able to use it for agriculture, which, again, is always affected. Specifically for Nairobi, because I think this is where the outcry was, is we need a master plan for Nairobi and major cities that respect seasonal and natural waterways. So where I used to live in Syokimau, at the river, We didn't know that we were living below the sea. I mean, we really got the brunt. So, I mean, can we be able to take this type of planning seriously? We've had the continued debate in Nairobi County that we don't have a master plan. I think Kilimani, there's this debate that is continuing around high-rise buildings with insufficient support infrastructure for the high population. So development of an evacuation policy and plan of action during natural disasters. So if you are to ask your typical Nairobian sitting in any residential area, what happens when there's a natural disaster? Do you scream? Do you piga firimbi? What happens? We need a structured way in which we can be able to help both SMEs as well as residents around disasters. So in other developed countries or even emerging countries, we see clear plans around emergencies. So do you go to a certain hall? Do you go to a school? What happens? What we saw on the news is guys being told, go to higher grounds. Go to higher grounds. So guys are like, which higher grounds? Yeah, so I mean, just a clear policy, working with the county administration, your MCAs, your county admin, to have designated areas in case of an emergency scenarios around fire, around natural disasters, what happens, so that you don't just tell people go to higher grounds. I mean, what does that even mean? So review of positioning of dams. Again, as the floods were raging, we saw a lot of dams were overflowing, and of course it was going to premises around SMEs as well as residents. So can we rethink, and of course with the geospatial data, etc., can we be able to plan our dams better, so that yes, we need the dams, but then you don't locate it somewhere which, in case of a disaster, can be able to affect an SME. So again, I think this is something the Kenya Space Agency can look into, specifically looking at how do we use geospatial data to ensure that some of these dams, which we need, are better positioned. Lastly, I think is, again, Nairobi County, and there was an outcry on drainage systems. There's a lot of buildings coming up, but supportive infrastructure is not there. So again, how can we be able to mitigate that? And possibly there was a strong sense of we need to stop. I think that's the thing we were being told. We need to stop building immediately and just have a relook in terms of our drainage infrastructure, so that at least we ensure that there is no loss of life. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That was me, Victor Otieno, signing out. Mic drop.
Thank you, Victor. So just don't go. Is there any emerging questions from what you've seen, or any reactions? I can see you're ready to speak.
Let me just add, I think so far, maybe just before, I just forgot about it, is so far we've only had 2 interventions. Number one is 140 million from the UK government to UNICEF, but focusing on household. And of course the famous 10,000 shillings that was announced by the president to around 40,000 households, that's around 400 million. And I think rebuilding of schools at 1 billion. Outside of that, there has been no intervention towards either startups or SMEs, which is dumbfounding for me.
And they are the backbone of the Kenyan economy. Okay, great. So we have a question there. Any other person has a question? Okay, one. Okay. Any other person? Wonderful. So we lock it 1 and 2.
Yeah, though I have a question for the previous presenter. Is that okay?
That's okay. Yes.
Yeah, so my name is Vincent Ogaya. I work with the Kenya Climate Innovation Center. I lead research and policy. I noted something from the previous presentation on ease of doing business, where it was indicated that the number of procedures required for Kenya is 3 against a global average of 5. I just wanted to seek clarification on how that is determined, and given our scenario as a country, and one of the issues around ease of doing business has been the number of procedures, and I'm seeing according to your report, that is one of the areas where we are doing well. Could we be the best? Could we be among the best, but, you know, where we normally say you are leading, but you are still doing poorly? Yeah.
Wonderful. That is for Stacy.
Good morning.
Morning.
Mine is a POI. I think as a country, and we need to take data seriously, because if you said the data existed since May 2023, and up to now we had only 2 interventions, or just a question, what are we not doing right in order to hold the stakeholders responsible so that we can be able to curb such issues in the future? Thank you.
Maureen, okay. Make it very brief.
Good morning, everyone. I think my question goes again to the previous presenter with a focus on the phased approach. How do I put this? Why do we have the funding consortiums and data sharing at the 3rd stage? And this is something we've been doing. Because I think just through ASEC, some of the projects you brought in, one of the biggest focus was you need to be a consortium for you to access. So it doesn't make sense for me. It doesn't make sense for me to have those 2 approaches at the 3rd phase. They should actually be at the 1st phase, because there is something. Maybe needs some cleanup and some clear framework, but it shouldn't be at the 3rd phase. So just wondering what informed that decision, because now that's questioning, because I'm assuming they had data that informed it there. So does it mean the data that is being collected is not accurate, or the people that were asked these questions and surveys were not the right people? And does that mean we need to look at the methodologies and resources we use to collect this data to make these informed decisions? So I wasn't quite sure why we need to have that at the 3rd stage instead of at the 1st phase. Actually, it should be happening already. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. Wonderful.
I have a comment around the ease of doing business. I think we previously had worked with the Ministry of EAC and Regional Development around ease of doing business. And I think one of the biggest pushback that we had received from SMEs is some of those parameters were not as granular. So if you look at issues around getting a construction permit at your mama mboga, how does that affect you? So maybe just to draw you to attention to a report that we had launched, I think, and Mercy was there, what we're calling the Kenya County Business Support Index. So it was a continuation of the World Bank Index, but more focused on SMEs, and particularly focusing on counties, and where we were looking at issues around the cost of license. So which counties have the most expensive licenses, if you're to compare either an industry or a general trade business. Looking at the business licenses automated, because those are the things that affect your typical SME. Looking at infrastructure support within counties. So if you are to look at Homa Bay, Nairobi, or whichever county, do they have, or are they investing in infrastructure around water, electricity, road, communication, digital labs, etc., that can be able to support SMEs? And lastly, looking at business support services and incentives that counties have to support SMEs. You'll notice that a lot of counties have what they're calling SME funds. But all like Tana River, I think it ilifungwa. Why? Is because the modeling around it is that they want to set up a committee to give loans to SMEs. I mean, it doesn't work. We know that that can't work. So I think for us as an ecosystem is to, can we be able to use such an index to develop parameters that affect us and work with county governments to improve that? So it is not a question of us against them. You know, a policy, I mean, in my little experience around policy is not a question of giving government a list and saying comply. It's a question of saying these are the needs that we have. How can we work together to ensure that we're able to meet our needs? So if a county government is structuring an SME fund, how can us as an ecosystem go and help them develop that fund? If it's climate resilience programs, you don't expect a director in trade to be able to develop a program around climate resilience. You need KCIC, you need people within that particular sub-ecosystem to be able to play a part. And I think that's the direction we should be moving towards together. And of course that ties into with data. Is sometimes government is like a dinosaur. I mean, from my little experience in government, is like a dinosaur. I mean, we have national government, we have county, we have a lot of agencies, we have space agencies. We assume that government has money because we always see June budget being read. Sometimes is that the data can be there, but there is no resource for them to action. It's not that someone is incompetent in their job. It could be that they're just not resourced, or they can't even communicate. I mean, we have KIRDI, you have Kenya Space Agencies that are doing a lot of good stuff, but even communication budget is not there. So how do I, and I can't use my salary to go communicate issues around my department. So I think if as an ecosystem we're able to see challenges and try to close ranks and support, I think that would be a better option. Now we know that they're called the Met Department are serious. You know, they've been ridiculed for a long time. You know, they say there's going to be rain, doesn't rain, we all laugh. And this time, I think we have gotten flat-footed. But probably, I think more collaboration, closing ranks, and working together as the broader ecosystem would be of assistance to us.
Thank you, Victor. Stacey, are you ready?
Okay. Yeah, so I think from the presentation, I didn't mention that we are doing, I think that was one of our least performing indicators. So the global average for the number of procedures is 6.1, but Kenya is at 7. So we are above the global average. So I mentioned that was one of our least performing indicators, not that we are doing well in the space. Just to clarify that. Is that clear?
You can have a mathematical discussion on that one. Okay. Analyze the point. Does it come before or after the dot, the number? Yeah. But to be honest, Kenya has the best policies, procedures, everything. The only challenge is now, like what Victor mentioned, granularizing it. And we were actually, when we were launching the other one, the Kenya Regulatory Toolkit, where we analyze both at a national level and at a county, what does it actually cost an SME to move from one county to do business to another county? And those are literally a calculator assessing everything from sales to the branding, equipment, everything. So there's a bit of gap there, but I think it's something that we definitely need to go deeper into. But let's take that up after break. Yeah. Stacey, there was a question on the phased approach. Do you have a comment on that one?
Yes. So the reason why, or rather the biggest or whatever we're using to decide whether something falls on the first or second or third, it's the level of effort and some of the intricacies involved in forming that collaboration. For instance, funding consortiums, you don't just come up with that. There's a lot of legal procedures required. And also data sharing. I think we also indicated in the elongated report some of the provisions that need to be observed from the Data Protection Act. So there's a lot of legislation that is involved, and that also, before you enact that collaboration framework, that might take a longer period. So there are some lower hanging fruits, such as events and the joint advocacy, that can be achieved faster as we build up the relationship to be able to have this the collaboration efforts that require a lot of effort as well as legislation. Yeah.
Maybe adding on to that one, the aspect of deep collaboration. The reason why we are still trying to pull people together, the biggest issue we have currently is lack of trust. Yeah? And even if I don't trust you, then how will I share programs with you, share data with you, or even to the extent of jointly going for programs? We've seen people forming consortiums without any legal documents. When the money comes in, who whose bank account is it supposed to be going into? Because there's no legality, there's no contract, or setting out a framework of how these partners should collaborate. What Stacey was mentioning as the first phase is how do we bring people together to at least start initiating discussions, right? And as they're initiating discussions, then we can build a trust structure. Because remember, trust is not, I don't think it's actually transactional. It's more on, I trust you, so I'll engage business with you, right? And so those are some of the things that we have to do as an ecosystem. So if we look at, I don't know if you can show that slide, but we have like networking events, meetings. Just pass me this one. And the laptop here. We have networking events, multi-stakeholder communication platform, knowledge resource platform, even joint ESO capacity building, is to first of all bring people into the room together. Let me tell you, the effort we have taken to bring you all together is not easy. Okay? And some of you have even tagged someone else to come for this meeting. And that's what we want to see as a ripple effect in the ecosystem itself. So the second phase, looking at multi-level, middle-level collaboration. Now that we know each other and we know who's doing what, then we can now speak about how do we do a joint program. If Edna is very good with networking, she has a very good session on Monday motivation, right? On networking. Who is good in advocacy? Someone here from KCIC is good in advocacy. Victor may be good also on government relations. Then you can start thinking of forming a joint program in relation to that. But to get to deep collaboration, there's a journey that needs to go on, and a lot of data has to be shared across different stakeholders. So if we can actually be able to focus on the key fundamental issue, which is trust, then we can now talk about collaboration and seeking even further funding as well. Yeah, but Victor, add.
Sorry, just my comments around the same. I think one of the, and this is just my observation of the ecosystem, the reason why we cannibalize each other is because every ESO is doing the same thing. I mean, if you are to move from here, from Nairobi to Eldo Hub to Kisumu to Lake Hub, you realize we are all competing for the same resource because we are unspecialized. Outside of Vilgro, who have a lot of programs, why? Because they have specialized, and now we have a space agency as another thematic area coming up. No one is moving towards that. And I think the conversation I've had with the Kenya Space Agency is, can you be able to come to ASEC and get one of the ESOs to specialize? Otherwise, if we continue the trajectory we are going, I don't think we would go anywhere. So I think for number one is just being able to specialize. Number two is aligning ESOs to continental priorities as well as national priorities. The reason why there is friction or miscommunication with government is because the programs that you have do not respond to MTP4 currently. So if you are to ask yourself, which government priority have you as an ESO aligned to ensure that there is collaboration between your government as well as development partners? What we see is ESOs running and solving their own problems, yet we have AU, we have the Science, Technology and Innovation Strategy for Africa, which has prescribed how Africa should move in terms of moving towards digital economy. We have Vision 2030, and more importantly, we have MTP4, which has a focus on digital economy as well as creative economy. Have we aligned to those areas, and are you suggesting solution to government around areas that they have raised as priority? Of course, we'll continue looking for donors, writing grants, etc., and cannibalizing each other, and we'll continue having challenges. So I think for me, as an ecosystem, that alignment has to happen. If not, then we'll just continue making noise, and policy will continue to have conversations with government with nothing moving because we are not collaborating.
So allow us just to end the discussion here for the part one. Let's grab a cup of tea. Yes, let's get some energy into you, and then we can pick it up from there. Brian, how long is the tea break? What time are we looking at? Can we come back at 11? And then tell us where we're going.
Yes, let's come back at 11. We've already eaten into some of our time. So the tea is just at the ground floor. So on your right, you'll see the tea station there. So you can pick your tea, come up if you prefer, and then we'll continue.
Can we do the photo afterwards?
Yes.
Tea break?
Yeah,
okay.
After tea break immediately, We converge at the front, do a photo, then we proceed. Karibuni chai.
us in terms of giving us the areas of innovation and also emerging opportunities where we can tap into, not only for the entrepreneur support organizations, but even from a policy angle, funding, or even a point of data. And we have someone from Red Cross, Priyanka Patel, who is joining us. Priyanka, just let us know if you can hear us.
Hi, can I?
Oh, great. Lovely. So we're just projecting you on the screen and then we can proceed. As we're setting up, Priyanka is a friend and a very ambitious innovation leader at Red Cross. She literally has her hands full on deck in terms of supporting and helping Red Cross be innovative and responsive to the different areas that they're working in. I think Priyanka also you mentioned about the IOME 001 that now has emerged as IOME 254, which is fantastic. That means every county in Kenya will have a makerspace and also a center of excellence in terms of supporting young innovators, women, and many other marginalized communities access a space where they can actually start and build their own innovations. So Priyanka, you're live on camera. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mercy, and thank you for putting this together. Hi, everyone in the room. As Mercy has been very generous with my introduction, I'm Priyanka Patel. I lead innovation for the National Society, which is Kenya Red Cross, under the International Center for Humanitarian Affairs, which is the research and learning arm of the Red Cross. So when you speak policy, when you speak advocacy, we're the experts in the house when it comes to the Red Cross. We have been existing for the past 5.5 years now as innovation as a department, but our innovation centers, which is in Lamu and Mombasa, have been around for 3.5 years now. Mombasa just launched last year. Also happy to see some familiar faces in the room that have been part of the journey. But I think what I'm here today to do, together with Derek and together with Dennis as well and the team that is there, is present to you why we're doing this. Just merging humanitarian work together with the startup network is because the International Center for Humanitarian Affairs, which is ICHA, has been sort of advocating for localization, has been talking big words and telling everyone all over the world that Kenya, as the National Society, as Red Cross, we're really trying our best to support internally and also access resources internally, be able to work with local partners, local stakeholders, local resources, local assets, local ability, but also the potential that the local community has towards becoming resilient. Now, what is the obstacle, or what are the challenges that make us not achieve that? Is, of course, there's a financial strain that doesn't allow us to become fully localized or decentralized. There will always be that dependency on international support or external funding. Even if it's just expertise and in-kind support, it will always be there. You can't completely remove it. But are we doing what is needed to look internally and support locally? Apart from just doing food donations, apart from giving financial contributions and financial checks, for instance, being able to give like bed sheets and beds and mattresses and mosquito nets, these are non-food items, which are all of these are equally important for us when it comes to response, when it comes to responding to community needs. But as a country, Kenya has been known to be one of those countries that leads in the space of innovation, in the space of startups. But are we doing what we are strong on in terms of response? What I'm trying to say is there's lots and lots of startups in Kenya that could provide solutions to these humanitarian disaster situations. When you speak of floods, when you speak of drought, there's quite a bit of locals, I wouldn't name them, but there's quite a number of local products that are being designed, developed, manufactured in Kenya that could be used for the Kenyan community. the same startups, the same companies could come together, even if it's donation of 20 products or donation of 2 products even. It has a huge impact to being noticed, being seen. So the next round of response, the next round of disaster situation, humanitarian organizations are aware of this capacity being available in the country to access. So the dependence of things outside of Kenya reduces and the internal support increases. So funding allocation will then be put aside to buy local, to get local support. Things like Dennis will tell you, but we do non-food item distribution. Like we give kitchen sets, we give mattresses and mosquito nets and all these items like soap, bar of soap and all of this. There's a lot of startups that do briquettes, for instance. That could be channeled to disaster response. Like, okay, giving kitchen utensils is one thing, but do we need to use firewood? Why don't we, because at the end of the day, those trees that are still there, they're still needed to hold the ground together. If we start cutting those to make firewood, it's not addressing the problem. So let's try and get startups to give briquettes, for instance. Let's think of different ways that can contribute to the humanitarian response. If we start doing this now, let's say 10 years or even 3 years from now, you'll see humanitarian response has changed because it is working with local startup networks to deliver aid. It becomes cost effective, it provides growth for the startups locally, it provides local solutions because local startups understand what resources are available, what are the local challenges, how can you improvise in a situation with available resources, as opposed to taking an off-the-shelf available product in another country. So I think what I wanted to just leave here today, or sort of trigger here today, was maybe not all startups are available in the room, but you do know startups, you do know people who are coming up with ventures and enterprises who could be the solution. Why are we buying bar soaps, for instance, when we could do, dissolving papers that could be infused with soap materials? There's so many different solutions that are available that we could take to the community. If it has a financial angle to it, this is our time to start showing realistic pilots for the communities that actually need it, as opposed to creating a scenario in a community setup and calling it a pilot, right? It gives you an extra leverage at the same time. So it's a win-win situation for both worlds. And I think at the end of the day, we have lots of innovation centers that are always looking at the main struggle of how do we sustain our existence? How do we sustain our operations? And these centers need to be put to use in these exact situations where all the startups, all the expertise, whether it's data related, whether it's hardware related, software related, all come together to find solutions for our own problems. Floods is not a conversation that just started in May 2024. It's been there for years. And Dennis will tell you there's another one coming end of the year. There's March, April, May rain season, and then there's October, November, December rain season. And then you have an unforgiving or a situation where the drought never wants to leave us. Drought will always be there. Every time you find a flood situation, you will be hit with an intense drought period because of the situation, the condition of the soil and the condition of the land. So I think water harvesting systems, for instance, all this for floods is very available. Let's try and find a way to bring this together. When it comes to the conversation of policies, when it comes to conversations of reforms and working with the government, I think this is now the time where we say, should we create a scenario where all startups can commit to giving maybe 2 products of their 1 annual or monthly production away to a disaster situation. So it's not being donated immediately, but it's being put aside for when the need arises, when an actual need arises on the field. And once you do that, then we are becoming a resilient country. We are, creating more localization, but we're also becoming more self-sustainable as different centers, as different startups, as ASEC itself, but even as a national society in the Red Cross. So I think I just wanted to give this little brief about what my impression of such sessions would be. And I really look forward to what comes out of it. There's a lot of great insights that Dennis will share with you. Just my last parting point with regards to data, I heard that question earlier as well, is there's a lot that we can do with data, but at the same time, there's quite a number of data that is missing, the relevant data that is missing from historical, response. So what we're trying to do as well is, if we're trying to do trajectory information using AI and all of this, we need to collect enough relevant data and relevant information. So it's good that we have partners like Google, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft. They're all really coming together to support this effort. So there has been a tech working group that has been created also to support data collection, but also like informed decision making using data. Satellite imagery is something that the innovation unit does. So in a nutshell, we also do drone services. So we have our own drones as a national society that we use for response, but also to do surveillance mapping, also in terms of data collection and mapping out the impact of floods. At the same time, we also do satellite imagery in terms of analysis, but also inform our decisions on how do we respond better, what is the kind of impact that has been felt at the community level, how many households have been affected, so on and so forth. So I think data can be very relevant for all different groups, whether it's a startup, whether it's even a response team, whether it's predictory information, or whether it's trying to create preparedness tools, and also looking at now the next step, which is recovery. But I'm very interested to see how the startup network can support the next step, which is recovery. We're currently moving from a phase of response to recovery, and then there'll be rehabilitation, and then there'll be another phase of response. So in between rehabilitation and response, there's preparedness. What are we doing to bring the strengths together within our country? That's all from me. Thank you. Over to you, Mercy.
Thank you so much, Priyanka. Can we just give a round of applause? And she's joining us live from Lamu, right? Or is it Mombasa?
Mombasa. Yes,
Mombasa.
I wish I was in Lamu.
Exactly.
Mombasa.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for making the time. Also, Derek is joining in from Lamu. So we're really trying to ensure we have inclusivity in these discussions. So I want to invite Dennis Odhiambo, also the man on the ground, to also come and give us the Red Cross situational analysis as well. But thank you so much, Priyanka. Yeah. Karibu, Dennis. Tumkaribishe. These guys do a lot of work, yeah, that we are not aware of, so thank you.
Thank you, Mercy. Good morning, colleagues. We are now colleagues because we are working together. So, my name is Dennis Odhiambo, working with Kenya Red Cross, main office in Nairobi County, under the Disaster Management Department. I am the Disaster Management Operations Coordinator for the emergency operation centers in this country. So thank you so much. I'll briefly take you through the analysis that we have so far from our desk. So this is the current information that we have as we are speaking right now. We have a total of 43 counties reporting effects out of the 47 counties. Out of that, we have a total of 77,674 households affected. In that number, we have a total of 45,311 households which have been displaced and are in camps right now. These totals to a number of 271,866,000 people. Besides that, we also have reported some effects on population. And then for fatalities, we are currently at 242 people who have lost their lives. We have also recorded a number of missing, standing at 160 right now. On infrastructure, 67 roads have been rendered impassable, cutting across areas of West Pokot, Kisumu, Tana River, areas of Taita Taveta, Mombasa, Lamu, and many other counties which have reported. In terms of health facilities which have been affected, we are currently standing at 42. And this one, we have also reported some health facilities which have run out of stock in terms of attending to the people who have been affected by the floods. Others have been rendered inaccessible due to the ongoing rains, especially in areas of West Kenya, which have been adversely affected by lake backflow. Schools, the number stands at 129. The majority were affected in Tana River, Kisumu, Busia, Homa Bay, and Migori counties, which have experienced lake backflow, and Tana River has experienced flooding from overflow from Athi River. Business premises that have been affected as a result, and this one was majorly reported in Nairobi County. So far, we have a number of 993 businesses that were affected. For water sources which were destroyed, sorry for that. For the water sources which were destroyed, and this one cuts across wells and main water points used by community members, we have recorded a total of 2,356 water sources destroyed, others contaminated due to the ongoing floods. For livestock death, the number is currently at 11,285 reported. And these ones again are the ones which were swept away by flash floods. Others, because their bodies were already emaciated due to the previous drought effects and El Nino. So some were found dead. And in terms of livelihood situation, the number of acreage of land which have been affected and others destroyed, the number is currently at 47,459 acreage of land destroyed. And as you can see in this map, it shows you clearly the coverage and the key areas that have reported the effect so far. This data is updated every day, so it will keep on having the number increasing. So I'll take you to the second phase of the impacts, and this one shows which counties are reporting the highest figures up to the list. So I'll start with Nairobi County, which reported the highest numbers since onset of the March, April, May rains. And the figure in Nairobi currently stands at 14,595. I'm trying to zoom it in. Yes. Then number 2 county is Tana River, reporting 10,375 households affected. and others have been displaced to displacement camps. So the number goes down up to Nyamira County, which has reported the least number with 6 households affected. And this one is as a result of landslide. We have not reported floods in Nyamira. The major effect that usually affects these counties in West Kenya is landslide, lightning strike, and drowning cases. So for Nyamira, we have not had much of floods. In terms of distribution per region, in Kenya Red Cross, we have divided this country into 8 regions. So the 8 regions stands at Lower Eastern, cuts across Makueni, Machakos, Kajiado, Kitui, and Nairobi. Then Northeastern cuts across Mandera, Wajir, and there's this one county that is running off my head. Marsabit is in Upper Eastern. So in coast, we have 5 counties: Tana River, Taita Taveta, Lamu, Kwale, Kilifi, and Mombasa. Then in West Kenya, we have 9 counties, cutting across Kisumu, Homa Bay, Migori, Busia, Nyamira, Kisii, Kakamega, and lastly, Siaya. So this is how we have divided our regions, and the region that is reporting the highest figures again is Lower Eastern, because of the overflow or the backflow in Athi River, which affected areas of Machakos, because of the overflow from the Ngong River, affecting majorly areas of Nairobi County. And then in Kitui, we have also reported effects of flash floods. Makueni, there were incidences of landslide affecting households. So this is the distribution and tabulation of the effects we have so far. When we move to camps, Coast region is leading in terms of the number of camps. And as we are speaking, we have 93 camps. The majority is in Tana River County. And as we may be aware, Tana River is a very vast county. So, having said so, it is majorly affected by waters from the islands of Central going towards the coast. Number 2 region which is leading in terms of the number of camps is West Kenya region, and these camps are distributed in Busia, which has 11 counties right now, and then Kisumu has 9, then Migori, Homa Bay follow up. Lower Eastern camps number 3, and there are other camps which have already been closed in Nairobi County. We still have existing ones in Machakos, Kitui, and Makueni. Going to interventions that have been done so far from the Kenya Red Cross. In the 43 counties, we managed to dispatch a total of 35 million terror messages. These are early warning messages. And to some of us who can confirm, we received messages warning us on the possible flooding situation in the country. We have dispatched again another batch of messages warning us on the possible flooding, because now the rains still continue. We might not receive rains in Nairobi, but there are other parts which are still reporting rainfall effects. So we have sent out another second batch to the population at risk of experiencing the same. For the interventions, we have distributed non-food items to a total of 9,997 households. Remember, these are just households. If you need to get the exact number of people who have received this, you times 9,997 times 5, according to the global sphere standards of the population. And then you'll get the exact number of people reached. Households supported with food stands at 18,300. The number of camps that we have are 255 in the country. And then the wash items that have been distributed, these are water, sanitation, and hygiene items. These cuts across dignity kits, they cut across access to clean water. Now we provide collapsible jerry cans to the affected populations. We combine it with the water treatment chemicals. We have reached out to 31,799 households. In terms of people who have been reached with the health outreaches, based on the current situation in the country, we have 12,149. So there is 49 in number that is not visible there. 12,149 people. Now these ones are people, individuals, who have been taken through health outreaches. Some of them have been guided through mental health programs. There are others who have also been supported in hospitals. Now that we've been doing rescues across the country, we have managed to safely evacuate 1,068 people in the country. That is where we are right now. And again, in terms of distribution per county, Nairobi County is leading in terms of the interventions so far. So with that, I come to the end of my presentation on analysis. Feel free to reach out. We have a daily situation report that is usually shared from the Kenya Red Cross Department. And if you log in to our portal, you'll just log in and then click on flood operations. You'll find our CITREP online. It looks like this. So here it is. It has all the info you will require to understand on the current situation. So we even have an advisory on the current weather